All right, well, welcome to the Seacoast podcast, where we just hit the record button because the three of us just talked a lot of politics, like some things that would cause a lot of polarity. We're just going to leave off the air.
Unfiltered.
Just going to leave it off. Because we're not a political podcast. We're about God's kingdom, Lynn.
We are.
Isn't that right?
That's right.
That's right. That's right.
That's right. There isn't perseverance or endurance that's happening. Like if you don't like something, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to work at it. You don't have to wait for anything. Like for us, we had to wait for the TV show to come on that one night a week. And if we weren't home, we missed it.
I used to be called Boss Hog growing up from like Dukes of Hazzard. When I was born, no hair right here.
This is why we have T on the podcast, by the way.
Like,
nobody else would mention the timing of the nickname being established. Lynn, this is great stuff.
So you don't realize the sacrifice that this woman makes for you, and all you're doing is looking for somebody who don't care. So what you're telling God is that what he gave you ain't enough. And I lost it. Like, my coach runs over because he just saw my uncle slap me.
It's like, who is this guy? He's messing with my team.
And then I'm like, no. And I got up and I apologized. And I was like, you're right. Like, God has given me so much. And I just went home and like my teammates are like just going crazy on the bus. And I cried the whole way back.
So.
Mm-hmm. That's good. You're going to try to add to that? I ain't trying to add to that.
Yeah, so.
Oh, okay.
Just because I don't believe or agree doesn't mean I can't learn from you.
Why did you have to bring that up? Okay, that one I'm super embarrassed about.
Do you like me?
Do I like you?
Yeah.
As an individual or as a podcast?
Just as a person.
No, I like you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I don't have any interest in appearing to be stronger than I am.
I ain't bow to Nebuchadnezzar's statue. He gonna lead. You feel me?
How do we love people who see the world differently than we do?
What would it look like if we truly loved all of our neighbors? Could listening to their stories be the first step? This is Seacoast Church, and there's way more to talk about.
So many Christians, we don't take that opportunity that is right there in front of us to be in God's kingdom and to tune all this other stuff out. But I get why it's important. Have y'all ever been in situations where you are texting with someone who is in a much older generation than you, and you pick up on their frustration? So here's what will happen sometimes. I will be texting back and forth with someone who's a good bit older than me, and then in the middle of the text, the phone goes off and it's their number. And I'm thinking, not only am I a text generation, but I'm also an introvert. I'm like, we're texting. Why are you calling? Like we're carrying on a conversation right now. But I couldn't pick up the phone. But he texts me. He's just like, why don't you just give me a call? Which I just love. Sometimes that older generation is, why are we texting right now? We could have a real conversation on the phone. But do y'all ever get into those situations where you can tell the other person's like, why don't we just talk on the phone? Not really.
I am that person. If it's going to take more than like 4 text messages, let's just call and have the conversation.
Yeah.
Just because I ain't got time for that.
Yeah.
I'm more than likely driving or doing whatever.
Right.
It's just as easy for me to say the words.
And I have my text message set up on my computer where people will get like a paragraph, be like, did you just text that? I'm like, yeah, it's on my computer. My text messaging is on my computer.
Yeah. Oh, if you got to text somebody from a computer, that needs to be a phone call. That's the new rule. That is the new rule.
Yeah, but I saw
if you're using 2 hands.
Yeah. If you gotta use 2 hands to text somebody, Joey called him.
But isn't communication on the go always better? This person could read it on their own time, respond on their own time. No. Are you ever like, I'm just going to pick up the phone?
Yeah, it just depends on the circumstance.
Your job is communication efficiency. That's your job here at Seacoast. Tell us how we should do this, Lynn.
Well, I would say with me, if I'm texting someone, it's something that I just need to tell them or get an answer to.
Right.
But I don't have text conversations. I do think because how do you know when the conversation begins and ends? Like when you're texting somebody, do you just say like, okay, I gotta go? Like, how do you end the conversation?
Yeah, it's an ongoing conversation. That's a good point. Text is an ongoing conversation. Now, you don't go back and forth with personal friends of yours as like friends. Hey, I just saw so-and-so. You'll never guess what so-and-so said, and go just back and forth having a conversation, or you don't really play that? Really?
I mean, I'll text with friends, but it's usually like, oh, a verse came or something funny happened or I'm sending them something. and it's just sending the thing, and then they're like, oh, haha, or like, but there's not like this conversation. So how do you just, it's like this ambiguous, it never stops or starts.
Yeah. I would say text messaging for me can be about work stuff, but it could just be reaching out to a friend saying, I was thinking of you the other day, remember in college when such and such happened? And we'll just kind of go back and forth, and it's like that we caught up what some people would do over lunch. And I do have lunch with my college friends too, but it's just kind of like, I don't know, keeping in touch. Stop? Well, it doesn't have to. I can just text back 2 weeks later and just resume the conversation.
So T is just like, oh yeah, I remember that. That was funny. And then crickets. That's just how it ends.
Yeah, I'll probably like it or do a little laughy, hold it down and just hit laughy so he gets the response, and then it's done. I laughed. Hey, I want to ask y'all, because Lynne, you're gonna really be psyched about this. We're gonna dive into T's story. This is a T episode, but I want to ask both of y'all though. Do y'all think it was? And this is just a have fun and guess. I know there's no way of knowing for sure. Do you think it was harder being a kid when we were kids, or harder being a kid now?
Now.
Mm-hmm. Now.
Yeah.
And why are you so quick to answer?
Because all kids are dumb to a certain extent, but these kids are dumb and they record it.
And it's And
it's there forever.
Yeah.
Like if there was Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, no way.
Yeah.
Like you had to be there in my stupidity for it to actually happen.
Yeah. Because
you couldn't prove it otherwise.
Right.
But right now, when kids are doing dumb stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and there's constant FOMO. So when the three of us were kids, and for some reason the person having a birthday party just couldn't invite that 11th person, and we're the 11th person, we didn't know about it for the most part. We would hear about it on Monday. There's a birthday party. Now you just see it. Like you will see groups of people that you're like, why wasn't I invited to that? Another thing that's I think a big deal is the bullying just automatically shuts off when you go home, because that is a safe place. Whereas now, technically, if you have access to a phone, the bullying can just continue even when you're at your safe place. Now, here is, I think, a nuance to this conversation, though, is I was listening to a comedian recently commenting on how soft of a generation this current generation is, because of how we have taught this whole, hey, if words don't kill you, they make you weaker. That's kind of like something that we're teaching the kids. So words, if we say it and it hurts your feelings, you're going to be a weaker person, so avoid it. So now we have, don't talk about so-and-so, don't use certain words, and all these sorts of things that I can kind of see as major increases or major improvements. But this comedian said back in the day when we were growing up, and I started thinking about it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so true. People were so insensitive that people's nickname would be something about their body. Like, so the one kid in the neighborhood, nicknamed Fat Boy. One kid in the neighborhood, his nickname is Lips, because he's got like a weird looking lip or something like that. And it's like, you would even have those sorts of label name calling where I think trust is acquired amongst them, and it's actually a real friendship, but people were just zero much so aware of what we're aware of today when it comes to just plain old hurting each other's feelings. So do you think that we're coddling this generation in comparison and potentially setting up softer kids? Does that even make sense, what I'm saying?
That makes sense, but I don't think that is why the sole reason why this generation is coddled, right? Like I think of even my friend group, there was a friend that we did that to. It hurt him. Right. And so we should never have done that. Right. And so I don't think that there's now that it's not okay to say hurtful things, that we're coddling them. I think it's, for a lot of reasons, media is one of them, the convenience of life. There isn't perseverance or endurance that's happening. Like if you don't like something, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to work at it. You don't have to wait for anything. Like for us, we had to wait for the TV show to come on that one night a week. And if we weren't home, we missed it. You know, you don't have to sit and, you know, like we didn't have streaming services that we could watch whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted. Most people didn't have a TV in every room so that if you didn't like what your family was watching, you could come over here and get on the tablet and watch something else. I think that every part of our society is tailored to what someone wants. And so they can't persevere through anything. They don't endure through anything. They don't sit in anything. I think that coddling comes there. It's not necessarily we're better at not being mean to each other. I think it's broader than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm about to get a whole bunch of people hate me. I think when it comes to nicknames, the time the nickname is given matters. First of all, if like I used to be called Boss Hog growing up from like Dukes of Hazzard. When I was born, no hair right
here. This is why we have T on the podcast, by the way.
Like,
nobody else would mention the timing of the nickname being established, Lynn. This is great stuff.
So like,
the timing matters.
I was, you know, a little pudgy little kid, so it stuck growing up. So I wasn't going to take offense to that because I've been called that my whole life. Now, if, I grew out of it and was skinny, but if that nickname were given to me at 15, yeah, that might have been a little different. But when it comes to the whole coddling thing, I think that we have a wussification of parents that are parenting out of hurt and not wanting to see their kid go and suffer through the things they went through, and it's not necessarily the best. Like, my kid plays sports. The amount of trophies that are given out drives me crazy. The fact that a parent will go to a teacher and fuss at the teacher for their child failing and not holding their child accountable drives me crazy. But it's not because they're not trying to not be good parents. They're trying to advocate for their child. And in doing so, they're missing where their kid is.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what I have found myself doing, and I had to do a big time 180 about something specifically in the Svendsen household, and it was our chore system. I was constantly given, like, we pretty much, you know, we make them do, they take turns having different chores during the week, and we follow up and all of that. But I was giving them too many easy outs, like, okay, I understand you couldn't get that tonight, so we'll do it tomorrow, or you forgot so-and-so, okay, well, next time, blah, blah, blah. And I sat them all down and I said, hey, I have been not putting parenting first. I've been putting my feelings first. And what I explained to them was, I'm cutting you guys these breaks and I'm making amends to the system so you guys don't get in trouble, because I don't want to see you upset or hurt or inconvenienced because I love you, but it doesn't have anything to do with my love for you when I make this decision. I'm basically putting my feelings over my parenting. So we are going to operate the chore system like it's real world. Real world consequences. When you don't do stuff, there's consequences. I'm not teaching you that in this house. And I just had to do, and I think that's a huge problem is we don't like to see our kids disappointed.
Nope.
And I have to will myself to be, to make a decision. Yeah, but I have to be a good parent because it doesn't come easy. That doesn't come natural for me. I definitely revere parents who it's just like, I'm the parent. I have to make the decision. I'm not even thinking about it. I'm teaching my kid what's right. Like, I have to make myself do that.
Yeah, and that was a perfect example, dude. Like, everyone wants their kid to like them, but it's not your job for your kid to like you as their parent. It's your job to be their parent. And if we're just being real, sometimes your kid should be pissed at you, because you're going to make a decision that's best for them and not that's going to make them happy.
Right.
Like when Malia was playing volleyball, she made the varsity team in 7th grade. So it's her at 11 and Monet, who was 17, and Angelique, who was 17. And all the girls from varsity that made the team, they go to the beach. Daddy, can I go? Absolutely not. But I'm on the team, and I'm so proud of you. But all these girls are going with their boyfriends.
Mm-hmm.
They're driving themselves out there. They're going to be seeing and doing things that an 11th grader should be doing. But I'm sorry. Was she upset with me? Yeah. Did she understand it though? Yeah, she did.
Right. Oh, for sure. Yeah, and taking that example and going even further is we have to realize that at 17 and 18 years old, they're not supposed to have a lot of that insight and wisdom because they don't have the life experience that we have. So it's like we're forcing something on them that they can't even understand why it's good for them. So it turns back into the sacrifice of, I'm going to make you do this when I know it's good for you, even though you don't have any eyes to see how this can be of benefit, and you're going to have to wait probably 5 years before you can even see it. I mean, that's parents is sacrificial work for sure. But when it comes to kids picking on each other, one thing, just kind of coming full circle, I have realized though that I don't think, and I think you said this, Lynne, too, I don't think meanness has changed at all. No. In schools. The rules of acceptability and non-acceptability have changed. So in other words, you can't call that kid in your class. You can't make fun of their weight, because if you do, you're going to be ostracized and canceled because that's against the rules. But the whole class is still mean. Like, I'm hearing stories of things that go on at my kid's school, and I'm thinking to myself, do kids just love to see other kids in absolute pain? And then I'm thinking to myself, do some of them just not have the ability to get inside another kid's head and think, how is this making them feel? But then it led me to think that's the same thing for adults. Like, there are certain things that adults do that, Lynne and T, I cannot even relate to it. Like, I can relate to a lot of messed up stuff because I'm a messed up person just like any of us, and I can relate to a lot of weaknesses. But when it comes to just being flat out mean to my fellow man, I don't get it. Yeah. Like, I don't get why that's something that we can be okay with, just being super mean to the other person.
Because hurt people. And if I have low self-esteem, the easiest thing to make me feel better is to look at and point out someone else's flaws. And that starts at an early age.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're focused on yourself. It's easy to, like, when you're focused on you, then you're not because you're thinking, how could I make another person feel like that? Because you're imagining what they feel like. But if you're self-absorbed, if you're self-focused, if you're a lover of self, you're not putting yourself in it. You're not thinking about the other person. It's just about you.
Right. Yeah. 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 And I can't wrap my mind around it. Like, narcissism is amazing to me, not in a good way, but just I can't compute what it's like to actually not care about anybody other but people. Yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that I can't relate to that, but there are some aspects of being now, my weakness is being a people person, and there's some aspects of that I think bleed into some weak areas where I wish I could care less sometimes because I am caring too much. It's not even good for me. All right. Well, I want to let me ask you guys both a question about your childhood when it comes to being accepted by y'all's peers. Did y'all have, would you say, more significant challenges than kids? My snapshot upbringing is that I was typically always in public schools. I was always super involved in church, and I didn't know really how to mix those two worlds. And so in school, I just kind of refrained from as much as I possibly could, including extracurricular activities and all of that stuff, because I wanted to invest most of my time in church, because I thought the things amongst my peers at school who were not saved were dangerous. They cussed, they talked about things that I shouldn't talk about. So I felt that constant tension, and I feel like I was the kid that would love and show care to everyone, but I struggled, especially in high school, with where to belong, because I also didn't really fit in with like super don't want to say cheesy Christians, but some of the Christians that are cheesy. I just reframed it. I don't want to say cheesy Christian.
Say what the
but
main
I'll
thing
say,
is in my head. But,
Just know there are no cheesy Christians in custom. None. Y'all are all amazing.
Not one. They're all cool kids.
That's right.
How about you guys? Like when y'all reflect on your childhood, does it put a smile on your face in regards to peers, school, friendships, and that sort of thing?
It's both for me. I would say my friends, the small group that I had, they put a smile to my face. But I was bullied all through middle school, and experienced some of it in high school too. And so I would have in any given day, the hard parts of the day where I wasn't accepted and I felt like people were, not feel like they actually were, like saying mean things to me. Girls would like follow me and just say awful things. And then when I could get away from them and I was with my friends, it was really life-giving and I felt included and those are friends that I'm still friends with today. So I would say through growing up from and that probably started in middle school and went through high school. So I would say I had a mix of at the same time feeling isolated and like I didn't fit in and even wanting people to not notice me. Because when you're going through that, you want to just be like, can I just be with my friends and somebody not notice me? So you have that. I had that one side, and then I have the other side of I had friends who were loving and fun, and we had a lot of good experiences. So I kind of experienced both of those things at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. What were you picked on for? Or is that too personal?
It's not. It's personal, but it's not too personal. In middle school, it started with a group of Black girls who made fun of the way that I talked. And it was
What high school did you go to again?
What high school? Brooklyn Casey.
Brooklyn Casey. Okay.
Were you a minority at that high school?
No.
You were not. Okay.
Not at all.
So am I hearing you correctly that Black people treated you somewhat of a minority in how you talked and how you carried yourself? Like, did you not carry yourself like them, and so they picked on you for it?
I would say, I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually had, you guys will get a kick out of this, so I don't have to go into it, but I actually had one of my most significant bullies in middle school show up at the James Island campus and become greatly involved, one of our leaders. And I finally said, do you realize you picked on me? He's like, no, I didn't, Joe. I was like, dude, I can tell you specific stories. Some people just don't remember that kind of stuff. And maybe he was hurting back in the day and he doesn't remember it too.
Yeah.
How about you and your peers?
Nah.
You were the man. Everybody was just like, I want to be T's friend in high school.
I had a lot of friends.
Yeah.
I was really good in sports, so I had that going for me. But I had 3 legit friends, 2 closer than, let's say 2. I had 2 friends that were nothing like none of the other friends. So everybody in the whole school thought of me as this, but Eddie and Shirley knew better. So even when I'm dating the wrong girl, I would go and talk to them and they'd be like, I don't know why you're dating her when you really like her. And the her was Christian girl, going to church, doing the right things, but I'm, chasing prom queen or whatever it was. It's just...
Football player?
Played football, basketball, track, cross country.
Dang.
Yeah.
Did all the things.
Did all things.
Dang. What was your, I know a little bit about Lynne's home life. I don't know hardly anything about yours. What was your home life like?
Well, I had a mom who was amazing. And then I had a dad who at 6 told me that he had enough kids and didn't want to see me no more. So I saw him at 6 and then I saw him at 26 when my grandma passed away. Wow. And then I saw him at 31 when he died.
Dang.
Wow.
All right, so he told you basically goodbye when you were 6. He had too many kids, couldn't keep up with them.
Man, Joey, you about to get some real ignorant Black people funeral stuff. So let me tell you what happened. My whole life.
Ignorant Black people funeral stuff.
Because here's the truth. When you go to a funeral, do you know what to expect? You never know what to expect. That's when all the stories be coming out.
And everybody has all the emotions.
Yeah.
And you think it would bring people together. But
And
sometimes
it does not. It is not. So my dad passes away.
Now, have y'all been to enough white funerals to know that there's a significant difference?
Oh, it ain't even close. I'm going to tell you.
Lynn's laughing at my question. It ain't even close.
Bro, I took James Murray to a black funeral like a month ago, and I was like, listen, we got to get here at this time. And he's like, nah. I was like, no, James, it starts at 11. We need to get there at 10. I show up at his house. We compromise. He's like, 10:15. I show up at his house at 10. This boy ain't even dressed. I'm like, bro, we're not getting in. We're not going to get a seat.
Yeah.
So we get there at 10:30. Sorry, we're waiting on the family, blah, 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 blah. So we're sitting there, we're shaking hands. The family comes in, and then they're like, all right, we got a couple of seats left, but all the way in the front. I'm like, James, we can stay at this funeral, but if you go, we are committing to 3 hours. He's like, no way. I'm like, yeah, and you're going to be shocked. He's like, okay. So we go, we sit up front. 3 hours and 26 minutes later, he comes out speechless. Like, he didn't know what prayer hands was. He ain't seen people running around the worship center. Like, he ain't seen none of that. It is, listen.
So black people funerals are always a celebration?
Oh, it is a theatrical celebration of life. Everyone I've ever attended. Ever.
I mean, I remember my first, and I was there for 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
And then you went to eat afterwards.
Yeah.
An introvert's nightmare.
Yeah. So anyways, back to my dad.
Yeah.
I am taking my wife, Melissa, to go see my aunt, my dad's sister.
Okay.
Right. And I've been prepping her. Hey, I got these 5 sisters. You're going to meet them for the first time, blah, 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 blah. We really hadn't been connected, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. We show up to the diner where my aunt works at. I'm like, hey, where's Rolanda, blah, blah, blah. And my aunt's looking at me like, who are they? I'm like, my dad's kids. And she goes, them ain't your daddy's kids. My whole life, I done grew up thinking these people were my people. Like, we were still kind of in touch. I'm letting them borrow cars and they wrecking them when we're younger.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
all of these things just to find out these girls ain't even my sister. That I have a half sister that literally lived a mile and a half down the street from me for like 4 years. And no one knew.
What?
Yes.
That's insane.
So I'm sitting there looking
at
at Melissa. Melissa's thinking that I'm lying, but then luckily my aunt like remembered the names and she was like, no, that was your daddy's girlfriend's kids at the time. We just said that y'all were brothers and sisters because it made sense of how old y'all were. And I was like, oh.
Gosh. So obviously we would need hours to get to the, a lot of the hard aspects of your story. I did have a few questions I wanted to ask though. Like at what point did you go from, oh shoot, I need to process and really dig into some of this heart stuff with my dad, as opposed to just moving it out of the way, not thinking about it, pushing it down. And maybe you never did go through a season where you just tried to suppress all the emotions and ignore it and everything. But was there a time when you're like, I got to process this stuff, man?
Oh, dude, I can remember we were playing Chapman High School at Woodman High School for the rights to go make it to the playoffs. I literally hit the game-winning shot and was looking in the stands for this man because I had random interactions with him and he'd be like, yeah, I'm going to come show up. And like, it was a big-time game. And I'm looking in the stands and he's not there. And I'm just like, all right, that's it. So I go home, like, they're all rushing the court. Mom's super proud. Uncle's super proud. And I'm just sitting there like, and my mom's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, nothing.
She knew, I bet.
No, she didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
But my Uncle Jay, I'll never forget. He walked up to me. He was like, what's wrong with you, boy? I was like, nothing. He was like, don't give me that bleeping stuff. Like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, my dad said he was coming to this game. I have this moment. He's not here to see it. And he legit slapped me in my face. Like, after we had won a game, And I looked at him like, what in the heck are you? And he was like, you inconsiderate, selfish little bee. You have a woman that's worked 3 jobs. Because my mom, when I tell you my mom was amazing, she legit was amazing. She worked at Beverage Air, she drove a school bus, and she worked at BMW just to make sure that I had food to eat. And she never missed anything. To the point that when I was a senior in high school, I was like, Mom, it's good. I'm gonna win this track meet. You ain't gotta come. And she's like, fine, I'm good with that. But if it's a major meet, I'm coming. And he was like, you don't realize the sacrifice that this woman makes for you, and all you're doing is looking for somebody who don't care. So what you're telling God is that what he gave you ain't enough. And I lost it. Like, my coach runs over because he just saw my uncle slap me.
It's like, who is this guy? He's messing with my team.
And then I'm like, no. And I got up and I apologized. And I was like, you're right. Like, God has given me so much. And I just went home and like my teammates are like just going crazy on the bus. And I cried the whole way back from Woodruff High School to Chesney High School. We got back at like 10:24. I got home at 1. And my mom was sitting there with the light on, like, what's wrong with you? And I told her. And I'm just crying to her. And I was like, Mom, I'm so sorry. Like, you are so great. It took this moment right here for me to realize that, like, we always talk about God will give you everything that you need. And I didn't know. And she was like, I just want you to know that your best is good enough for God, and it'll always be good enough for me. Like, it was, I mean, it's crazy.
That was a miracle moment, sounds like. Like, that was the shift.
It was a miracle moment.
Dang.
Now then, fast forward, I'm sitting here at my dad's funeral at 31, and then that's when I realized that I had some wrong in some of the things that were going on growing up. Like, when my daughter was born, I should have given my dad an opportunity to be a better grandparent than he was parent, because I robbed my daughter of an opportunity to have a granddad. Because I'm sitting here and all these people are telling me all this stuff like, yeah, he's so great. And that's the other thing. I don't know about white funerals because I ain't never really had to experience that. But like, people lie.
You've had to do some white funerals, I'm sure.
Yeah, but people lie to you to try and make you feel bad because they think that you're like mourning or in pain. Like, I was sitting there crying at the funeral not because I was mad that this dude died. I didn't even know this dude. Like, he's just I mean, I knew who he was, but as far as being some integral part of my life, he wasn't that. I was crying because I robbed something from my daughter that I'll never be able to give back to her. But all these people start lying to me, and I'm just like, stop. Like, this guy didn't even know this child existed. First of all, they were like, yeah, he always talked about his grandbaby. He was always going to see him and blah, 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 blah. Because at this point, Melissa wasn't even there with Malia. Like, they were still at the house. And I'm like, first of all, I got a daughter, not a son. So, and it's cool. Like, if he was a great person to you, let him be a great person to you. He wasn't that for me. Like, I'm here out of respect because I know it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, do you think it also has to do, like, you as an older man now reflecting on your daughter and your dad and all of that, do you think it also has to do with now more mature than you were in your 20s, for instance, you recognize that it's not as, like, it's almost impossible for a kid not to see their parent who has wronged them so deeply in like a good or bad category. But as you get older, you recognize, hey, even though that man hurt me so much, I know it's not as simple as he's bad, he's a bad person because of what he did, and hold good and bad with more tension. Like, there are some good things about your dad. Like, do you think that was a part of the whole equation? And
no, see, I can't say that there were good things about my dad because I just didn't experience that.
Yeah.
Now, what I can say is my mom passed away on November 11, 2011 from leukemia. Now, she had been fighting that battle for a little over a year and a half. And in that year and a half, I got closer to my mom than I had ever gotten before. And I asked her real life questions, and she gave me real life answers. And some of those questions I asked was about my dad. And it made me understand this, because my mom was like, hey, I just got divorced. I was 30 years old. I wasn't necessarily looking for a husband. I was looking somebody with a genetical makeup to make a child because I wanted to be a mom. So she met my dad at a club. My mom was like 4 or 5 years older than my dad. She conceived a baby. He said he didn't want nothing to do with me from the start to her, which, I mean, that is what it is. She decided to keep me. She tried to, give him an opportunity to be a dad, and it just didn't happen. So with that knowledge now, I'm like, does that make it right? Absolutely not. But I understand, like, my mom was pushing the issue for me to see this guy. He had no interest in me from the beginning. So I feel like I would have just been better off just never meeting him at all, personally, because you can't miss what you've never had. But the fact that I had him for a short amount of time, at short spurts, made me grow up thinking that I was missing out on something when I really wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever circle back around to your uncle and say, hey, I would have gotten the same message. You didn't have to slap me? Or did the slap seal the deal?
Nah, like...
And I'm not making light of your story, but it is, bam!
Nah,
like, did that let it sink in?
It did.
Was it a helpful slap?
It stopped me in my tracks. And I was like, oh, like, you're right. Because, I mean, my uncle growing up was like my dad. He lived right down the street. He was the one who taught me how to drive. He was the one who, like, taught me about girls and talked to me about shaving and all other things. So, like, he had the relational capital to do it, and he felt that was the moment he needed to do it, and God bless him for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's crazy. Did you know any of that?
I didn't.
Thanks for sharing that, man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I got to know, how'd you come to a real transformation when it comes to your relationship with God? It sounds like you were raised by a godly mother.
I was.
Was there ever a moment in which you can remember making the beautiful faith of your mom that she was giving to her son, making it yours?
Well, like, I gave my life to Christ 9th grade with my girlfriend at the time. Super sweet moment. We went up to the altar together.
Did you get saved by your babe?
I did.
All right.
I did.
Was it real?
But it was. I went home and broke my Brandy CD, broke my Warren G CD. I did. Now, with that being said, I did like most, 14-year-old kids and was being stupid. I was still out doing things that God didn't approve of. And then you fast forward all the way to 2004. And again, I still believed in God, all of the things. Had quit going to church because I was living in Charleston and was the typical CEO Christian, Christmas, Mother's Day, Easter. I was there, but I would drive all the way back home to go to church. And I started playing basketball with these guys on Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings. And a guy named Chris Winders was like, hey, you should come to church with me. And I was like, no. He's like, dude, it ain't black church. You ain't going to be there forever. And I was like, well, I appreciate that, but white church is even worse. Like, I'm going to be falling asleep. He was like, nah, it ain't like that,
Pick
man.
your poison.
It's a church. It's called Seacoast.
I can either be bored for an hour.
You're right. And he was like, look, worst case scenario, you try it one time. It's only 40, 45 minutes. And we'll get to the gym, 10:45. We'll be on the same team. It'll be perfect. I'm saying to myself, all right, I got 45 minutes for God. Even if it's boring, I can stay up for 45 minutes. And I came through the door, and it was, honestly, it was entertaining. And it was stupid, simple Christianity, which was what I needed at the time. Like, I was able to go in. I could understand what he said. Now, it was not what I was used to. It was not fire and brimstone. It was legit teaching. And it was applicable to my life. So I was like, I can do this. And then I ended up going to Kendall Buckendall ran a basketball league. And I signed up to go because I was playing on Chris's team. And I walk in the gym. Now, mind you, I'm 23 years old. I'm going to tell you right now, Pastor T now, Pastor T 23 years old was totally different. My girlfriend had made this email address for me, and I'm going to say this, and you might even cut this out.
It's going to be classic when people get to this point, they hear beep, beep.
Now,
we got to know his email address. What was it?
I walked into the gym, and Kendall Buckendahl yells out, "Hey, it's Big Sexy Negro 23 at yahoo.com." And I'm like, no, this man did not. So I was Big Sexy Negro for an entire basketball season. Nobody called me anything else. It was hilarious, but it stuck. Like, me and Melissa came every Sunday, and then when they opened the drink, we tried to get connected.
The name didn't stick, though.
Oh, no, I got an adult email. As soon as she did that, I went to Tomelex Copeland at yahoo.com.
Big Sexy Negro at seacoast.org.
Right? But you know
Could you
what?
imagine somebody visiting North Charleston campus, and then they get this email saying, "Hey, we were so happy for your visit. We love you. We want to tell you about Inside Track. Love Big Sexy Negro."
But it was so funny, man. Like, it was so funny. I got it. Like I said, I got a new email and started serving at the church, and things just happened.
Are there people in your life that they're still, and may not be the case, maybe the complete opposite, like I saw this coming. Are there people in your family, in your life that go way back? They're just like, I cannot believe you're a pastor.
Like, Eddie and Charlene never question anything. My mom would tell me that, and I'd be like, lady, you need to stay off the holy water. Like, that's your path. Cool. I'm going to support you. I don't think I'm going to be a pastor. Now, going back home, half of my friends are like, oh, that's amazing. And then half of my friends are like, bro, I remember like sneaking in closets with you when parents were home and then jumping out windows because you were doing things you weren't supposed to be doing in places you weren't supposed to be. And now you telling me you living for Jesus. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm telling you. Mm-hmm. So,
do y'all think that the Dream Center or North Charleston campus at Seacoast, is it as unique as it seems? What I mean by that is, I've been to black churches before, and if we weren't the only white family there, it was maybe just one other white family. Go to many Seacoast campuses, which has been my context of church now for 22 years, and most of the campuses, majority white people. It seems like North Charleston campus occupies a space that's unique in that it really is a hybrid, and I don't know, like it's like the chicken or the egg approach. Have black people influenced the culture of Seacoast at that campus that has kind of given such a lovely balance? Or would you say that Seacoast has taken the culture into black community?
You ready for this? This is going to be the most PC thing I've said ever.
I got to hear it.
You're going to be so proud of me.
You're going to say the Holy Spirit orchestrated it all. Joey, why even ask questions?
No. I feel like Seacoast does a great job of representing this community that it's in. Mm. So you can't be mad at Mount Pleasant for having 10% brown people when the whole city has 8% brown people.
Yeah.
Is it 8%?
It's not a lot.
It's not, yeah. If it's 8, that's
moved up.
And that's a big change from 20 years ago, though, right? Yeah. Growing up here. Okay.
Versus my campus that's literally in the center of black-brown community.
Right.
So, of course, my campus is going to look different than everybody else's.
Yeah.
Now, with that being said, representation matters. So seeing me on stage, seeing Mike on stage, seeing all of that matters, but a lot of it is location.
Yeah.
And they did a good job of custom making our campus for our community. Because it's a lot like every other campus, but it's not like any other campus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's good, wasn't it?
That was real good.
What? And
off the cuff.
That was a message from Big Sexy Negro 23 at yahoo.com.
Hey, what do you struggle with these days? Like, what's what would, is there a one thing that you could point to and say, this is my thing nowadays that I really struggle with, like an internal struggle?
What do I personally struggle with? I struggle with being lied to. And I struggle with people saying they won't help and not actually wanting it or receiving it when you talk to them about it. Like, kind of like we were talking this morning. Like, if I already know the answers to the test, I'm trying to help you pass the test, and let me help you pass the test. So if you and your wife are fighting, right, and you know that your wife is super close with my wife, and I say, Joey, how are you today? And you say, blessed and highly favored, like that makes me want to slap you. Because I already know that you two fought on the ride to church because your wife then already texted my wife and she's like, I don't believe Joey had me getting these kids up all by myself, even though he knew I needed to be a kids coach and blah, 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 blah. And here he is, just a journal and eating his Fruit Loops, not even caring about the rest of the household. And it's been like that for weeks. And then you have this 45-minute condescending conversation on the ride into work or to church. And then you'd be like, I'm so great, T.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're not, Joy. So why don't you just say, man, it's too much to talk about right now, but be in prayer for my wife. I'd love to talk to you about that, or me and my wife. And I'd be like, cool, let's get lunch and unpack that. Because I already know the answer. And you know what? When I was in a different role, I got a lot more of those conversations. But now that I'm in this role, it's like, oh, I don't want T to know that we're not doing well. And I'm like, dude, I am the same person. And if not me, then who? Like, I should be the one that you should be going to saying, me and my kid aren't seeing eye to eye, or me and my wife are struggling with this financial situation, or we're like.
Interesting. Yeah.
Do you feel like that, not just with certain relationships, but do you feel like across the board when you moved into the campus pastor position, that shifted things in the way people are vulnerable or open with you?
100%.
Even the congregation.
I was at a baby shower, right? Just attending a friend's baby shower. And I intentionally don't tell people what I do unless they ask. And even if they ask, the first thing I say is, I work for Jesus. Like, I just leave it at that. We're sitting at this baby shower. They're like, what do you do? I work for Jesus. Really? Like, what do you mean? A girl goes, he's a pastor. All right, y'all, nobody drink anything. The pastor's here. I'm like, so if I wasn't here, y'all were going to order drinks, but now because I am here, you won't. Because God is everywhere. So I don't even matter. Whatever you're going to do, you answer it to him too, not to me. No, but we want to be respectful. Then you do you.
Yeah.
But you don't owe me nothing. Like, as long as what you do isn't dishonoring to God, and I don't care what you do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, so if we look at the North Charleston campus, we would point to the diversity that at that extent, and you gave some good reasons why. I mean, just the demographics of Mount Pleasant, for example. But at that extent, no other campus is like that as far as that sort of diversity. So in the greater Seacoast world, it's still the majority white people. Have you ever, coming in out of the North Charleston campus and into environments in which you're intermingling with the capital S Seacoast Church, do you ever feel like people look at you like, oh wow, that's cool, we have a black pastor here? Almost like and listen how he talks, this is cool.
I used to. I don't anymore. But I definitely used to. I definitely had a token feel for a while, but Brian, Lynne, Joel, it makes it a little different.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Happy to hear that. Because I know for a while you were being pulled into all sorts of conversations. But the reason why I asked that is as I get older, I do recognize my upbringing is, you know how you get stuck in these ways of thinking where you're just like, my upbringing is normal. Everybody else had something similar to me. And I, as I've grown up, I recognize that people hanging out with other folks and other races isn't as common. Like, it was just a part of my natural day-to-day public schools, churches that I fellowshipped in, all the way to being a public school teacher. So there's got to be a lot of people here in Charleston who just, their life just didn't entail that sort of thing, right. You know?
And don't get it wrong, I don't mind having those conversations. I actually like having those conversations because the conversation needs to be had. And if you're not going to have the conversation with me, then who are you going to have it with? Mm-hmm. And that's the more worrisome part is that if you don't take someone like us and have this conversation and you accidentally run into some Joe Blow on the side of the street and you're like, you know what, can I ask you a question? Your answer could be crazy. Mm-hmm. It was kind of like when all this stuff happened and me, Pastor Greg, and Josh were downtown. It's George Floyd.
Yeah.
We were downtown, and all the people were marching, and we were just marching, and this guy is on his front lawn, and with a sincere heart, he was like, this happened in Milwaukee. Why are you marching here? And these random young black kids just ran up on him and started cursing this dude out, and he's like, I'm just asking a question. And then this older black lady came, and she's like, don't worry about it. We're going to see you at the polls, blah, 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 blah. And this dude is just standing there dumbfounded. And I'm like, I'll be back. And I left Pastor Greg and Josh, and I went over and I started talking to the guy. And I started explaining it to him. I was like, hey, I know this happened here, but it's happened way too often. And they're trying to show, you know, a sign of solidarity. Mm-hmm. We're just not doing a good job of it in this moment. Not that the march wasn't right, but what just happened to him wasn't right. Mm-hmm. So we have this, you know, great 10, 15-minute conversation. He shakes my hand. He appreciates me and thanks me for having a conversation with him. And I go on about my day. And he goes on about his day. Now, if I don't have that conversation, his only interaction with a brown person would have been what those girls said.
Gosh, yeah.
And that would not have helped us in that moment. Mm-hmm. And that guy would never, ever, I guarantee, ask another question like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what's interesting is I think it depends on how you're wired up. Like I've met people, I know a lot of people like you who almost, there's a natural inclination. I'm going to take responsibility for this because it adds to the world. This is what we need. These are the sorts of dialogues that we need. And then there's some people who I also understand. It's just like, it's not my job to educate everybody. I'm out. I like go read some really awesome books, you know, just to kind of depend. And it feels like it's part of something that you've personally given to yourself as almost like a calling. Like I want to add to the conversation. Is that accurate?
I feel like you can't get mad at people for not knowing when they ask you questions and you don't give them answers. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So we'll close it out here. I want to ask y'all both this because we joked around. We were talking some politics before we hit the record button, and I was thinking about this terminology when it comes to Christians and politics. Or this phrase, "stay in your lane." All right. And so what I'm not saying is that there shouldn't be Christians shouldn't have political zeal. Christians shouldn't be involved in politics as, you know, people running for positions. I'm not saying that. But don't y'all think that there's so many Christians who voluntarily give up, in my opinion, one of the greatest privileges of being a Christian, and that is God's kingdom first. This is my first priority. Everything else filters through this. It feels like so many get out of that lane, and there's like this dual prioritization of my political party and my church, and it feels or my faith. It feels like so much stress, so much fear, so much angst about November 2024 could just be pulled back a little bit if Christians were like, wait a second, get to be in God's kingdom. Like, do y'all ever get frustrated when you feel like Christians don't put the stock into that I think it's a blessing that we could?
I've already gave my politically correct answer plan, so this is you.
Short answer, yes. But I think, and this is a cultural, Western culture, American culture, you look around, where the rubber meets the road and what we really believe, what we say we believe and what we actually believe. Because you're right, everything that we do filters out of who we are in God's kingdom, for his kingdom. But I think that this is an example of us using the systems of the world to try to advance God's kingdom, right? Like, oh, this is not like these kind of activities are not the heart of God, so I'm going to legislate them. And that doesn't mean that you don't stand for protecting the vulnerable, like helping people. But I think when you are laser focused on this is how I advance the kingdom, and if this doesn't happen in government, in politics, and whatever it is, then God's kingdom isn't moving forth. That I think that's where it gets murky, where God will plant you somewhere. Daniel was in pagan governments. Joseph was, second in command over Egypt. And so it's like God will plant you in government systems. But for you to think that your primary purpose is to use that system to advance his kingdom is just it's a shift. It's like, how do I walk in what God's called me in that arena versus using that arena and labeling this political party as this stance is this policy is this, when it's so nuanced, even within. I mean, you get into Congress and you have a bill and to get it passed, you're giving this person this thing so that they'll agree to this so that they can support you. At the end of the day, nothing is cut and dry. That
was good. You're going to try to add to that? I ain't trying to add to that.
Yeah, so.
Oh, okay.
You know what I think about? I think about the Church of Acts. So what was the Church of Acts? Anybody?
It's new.
But everyone was what? They were all coming together?
Had everything
Gave
in
their
common.
money together, shared food.
Like, I feel like if we concentrated more on making our churches, the churches of Acts, and making our churches pour in the communities and the peoples that are in the community instead of building big buildings. And I'm not just saying that because we got big buildings. I'm just saying in general, like, there are a lot of big churches around here that aren't doing things. Like, they don't have outreach programs. They don't have mentoring programs. They aren't, like, trying to help kids educate themselves. Like, if the church started taking care of the people, then we wouldn't have to rely on the government to do it. Mm-hmm. And if the government controls the people because we're so reliant on it. So if the church was having food and giving it to the people wouldn't rely on the government. If the church was helping people graduate, making sure people's homes were, suitable to live in, we wouldn't have to worry about the government to do it. And then that would in turn allow the people to vote in the right people in the government. Because then there is no, I'm going to give you this because the church has already given it to me. So I'm not being manipulated by anybody. And if you could vote in the right people, then the right people could get in government and the government could change the country. Mm. But it still starts with the church.
Yeah. All right, I can't let you go without a sports question. Caitlin Clark, you know who that is?
Why are you playing with me? Of course I know who she is.
You know who Caitlin Clark is? All right, so Lynne, she is the most electrifying, and you just can't get around it. Men's sports are more popular, so sorry if this is not PC, but she's one of the most electrifying women athletes maybe ever. My question for you, so she's college hoops, Iowa. She just surpassed the most college points.
Jerry West.
Pete Maravich.
Pete Maravich, yeah.
So she has more college basketball points on the basketball court than any male or female athlete she's from Iowa Hawkeyes, so they're sold out constantly. She's like the Michael Jordan of college. Do you think that she's going to do to the WNBA similar to what Magic and Bird did for the NBA when it was in a decline? Like, are we about to see the WNBA blow up? Because she is a phenomenon. I mean, she's huge.
So first of all, she's not the Michael Jordan of college because she's not a champion.
Right.
So
right.
She's more like the Karl Malone of college. And there's nothing wrong with that.
All right, in all fairness, she was a better college basketball player than Michael Jordan was. Because Michael Jordan, you wouldn't consider him one of the greatest college basketball players. He's one of the greatest basketball players. He's not one of the greatest college basketball
players. Well, we'll
players.
have to have this conversation another time because he was on a team with like 5 Hall of Famers.
Sure.
So you can't tell me 2 people on her team. Tell me anybody else on her team.
Caitlin Clark's teammates.
Exactly.
1, Caitlin Clark's teammates. 2, Caitlin Clark's teammates. 3.
My point. You know James Worthy. You know Sam Perkins. So there is that. She is an amazing athlete. She is one of the greatest scorers you will ever see, ever. She is the female equivalent of Steph Curry, I would say.
Oh. Are you interested at all now? Like the fact that just white noise, don't even care.
And the funny thing is that she's got she's vilified because she's got a little bit of swag. And I like it, but I don't think she's going to be the savior of women's basketball. And I'm a big fan. Like, my daughter likes the Aces. We watch almost every Ace game. But it's going to take more than that. It's going to take, honestly, it's going to take a whole bunch of girls dunking. Because women's basketball is everything that's right about basketball. It's pure. Very few times do they like take bad shots or whatever because everyone's not trying to make a highlight play because they put an emphasis on winning.
Wow, yeah.
So if you watch like the women's championship game, the X's and the O's, amazing. If you watch the boys game, it's going to be like 30 turnovers because it's going to be lobs from the 3-point line and crazy behind the backdoor passes that ain't going to ever be there.
Lynne will start watching college hoops with women if they start flying around the court. Like, legit.
Probably not even then.
Not even
But you get a couple girls that start dunking in games, like the girl from Carolina, Watkins. Mm-hmm. You start getting a little bit more of that, I think you'll get the fan base up.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you guys. This is good hanging. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to go through the hard stuff. That was the easy stuff.
That was the easy stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
All right. Well, part 2 coming up.
You've been listening to the Things You Won't Hear on Sunday Seacoast podcast. In the show notes, you'll see a link to our Facebook group page. Also, we'd love for you to consider subscribing so you get these episodes downloaded right when they come out. Thanks so much for listening.